Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into a really powerful ancient framework for understanding our own minds. We're going to talk about mental resilience, and we're going to trace suffering all the way back to its ultimate source.
Okay, so to get us started, let me tell you this old story that just perfectly sets the stage. There's an old woman who loses a needle inside her dark hut. Someone comes along and sees her searching for it on the street, outside, under a lamp. And they ask her, "Why are you looking out here if you lost it in there?" And she just says, "Because the light is here." This is such a powerful metaphor for how we often look for the causes of our own distress.
For a long, long time, this has been our go-to approach. We search for the causes of problems where our scientific instruments can see, right? Out in the external world. Germs, viruses, all the things we can observe. And hey, for things like communicable diseases, it worked. It was brilliant. We found the cause out there, and we created solutions.
But here's the thing. For so many of the challenges that define our lives today, chronic stress, anxiety, depression, that needle wasn't lost outside. It was lost inside the dark hut of our own minds. So today, we're going to turn inward. We're going to use the map that Patanjali's Yoga Sutras give us to finally find it. So what is the ultimate source of all this mental struggle according to this ancient framework? Well, Patanjali doesn't describe it as just one thing. He lays it out as a causal chain, like a series of dominoes falling, one after the other, starting deep, deep inside our own psyche. What's so cool about this is how it's laid out, almost like a plant's life cycle. It starts with karma, which is basically the soil of our mind, created by all our past actions. And out of that soil grows a seed, avidya, which is this fundamental ignorance or misunderstanding of reality. That seed then sprouts and grows into the kleshas, this big tree of afflictions like attachment and fear. And the fruit that inevitably grows on that tree? Well, that's suffering. So if avidya, this ignorance, is the seed, what's the fertilizer? What makes it grow so strong and powerful? Well, this framework points to three incredibly powerful, disruptive emotions that act like fuel for the fire. And here they are. First, you've got Lobha, or greed. It's that nagging feeling of just never having enough, never being satisfied. Then there's Krodha, or anger. This is a destructive energy that we can aim at others, or, as many of us know, we can turn it inward on ourselves, which can be even more painful. And finally, there's Moha. This isn't just liking something, it's a transactional attachment. It's when I like this turns into I must have this, and eventually I can't live without this. But here's the crucial part. These internal emotions don't just stay inside our heads, right? They build up, and they directly influence how we act and the choices we make out in the real world. When we get completely overwhelmed by greed or anger or that intense attachment, our actions just get thrown way out of balance. We're driven to do things that go against our own better judgment, and we end up breaking what yogic philosophy calls the yamas.
Think of the yamas as the absolute foundation for a resilient mind. They're these universal principles like nonviolence, being truthful, not being possessive. So when our emotions drive us to break these principles, it's literally like taking a sledgehammer to the foundation of our own house. We're left totally vulnerable and exposed to all kinds of mental distress. And what's really fascinating is that this isn't just some abstract, ancient philosophy. Modern science is actually starting to back this up. For instance, a recent study looked at the link between these concepts and stress, and the results are pretty amazing. You can see on this chart, there's a really strong positive correlation. But look at that top bar. Avidya, that fundamental ignorance we talked about. It is the single biggest predictor of perceived stress, with a correlation of 0.59. That's huge.
Okay, so if these big, intense emotions are at the root of the whole problem, what's the solution? The most obvious answer seems to be, well, just fight them, right? Just suppress them. But the yogic approach is so much more sophisticated and honestly, so much more effective.
This slide just lays it out perfectly. Suppression is when you're literally fighting your own energy. It creates all this internal conflict and, as modern psychology will tell you, it often leads to neurosis. But the yogic path is sublimation. It's about recognizing that these emotions are just raw energy. They're not good or bad, they just need to be directed. The whole goal is to channel that energy, and in doing so, you can transform what feels like a weakness into your greatest strength. So how in the world do we do that? Well, this table maps the problem directly to the solution. Take that intense, firing energy of anger or greed. Instead of letting it be destructive, you can channel it into karma yoga, selfless action. Imagine taking all that anger about injustice and using it to actually create change in your community. In the same way, that powerful energy of attachment, or moha, can be sublimated into bhakti yoga, transforming a needy transactional desire into a selfless unconditional love.
These solutions are all part of 4 main paths in yoga. You can think of them as our innate strengths, these built-in, constructive channels for our most powerful emotions. Whether it's through selfless action, or deep devotion, or intense self-reflection, or disciplined self-mastery, there is a path to take that raw emotional energy and turn it into a tool for your own growth.
So, when you boil it all down, the ultimate takeaway from this whole framework is pretty profound. The very energies that cause our deepest suffering, our anger, our attachments, our desires, they are not our enemies. They're not something we need to destroy. In fact, they are our greatest source of power. They are the fuel in the tank. The only question is, now that you know, where are you going to direct